Listen to the vibes.
The views and opinions of our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the host or the Vibes Broadcast Network. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. I'm very privileged to have Mr. David Green here with me. He is an author, he's a musician, and a speaker, and we're going to learn a little bit more about him and have a great conversation. Hopefully we can motivate, inspire someone out there that's watching or listening to this today. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I grew up in Toronto, Canada, where it's nice and cold. That was nice. That was in itself enough of a incentive to move to Israel, where I live now, where it's nice and warm. When I was a kid, I was 16 years old. I was completely immersed in the music business, and my whole life was about being successsul. To me, by the time you hit 20, you were like over the hill. So I wanted to make it big before I was way too old, and now I have a 20-year-old son getting married. So it's hard to believe. So back then I was so immersed in the music industry that in a way I was disconnected from myself. A certain type of success becomes an obsession, and you run after it, and like you leave behind breathing, you leave behind tasting, and your senses are somewhat numb to this constant effort to try to make it big. And what happened was, like, I came from more of a jazz R&B background, and it was demanded to be somewhat of a snobby musician. That was like part of the requirement, to be hypercritical about everyone else's music except for the great jazz musicians. And what happened was I went to Los Angeles and recorded an album there with an amazing producer, arranger named Gene Page. He's now passed away, but he was in the black music scene. He was like one of the top arrangers and worked with the best musicians. And so I was working with him, but when I was 18, and he was very intrigued by this young guy, in Hollywood, trying to make it big. And we became friends. And what happened was he was nominated for a Grammy, and he wasn't able to accept it. So he asked me if I would accept his Grammy on his behalf.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And that's exactly what I said. Wow. But that wow turned into a bit of a scare. Like, what if I go up there and I accept the Grammy and I forget the guy's name? You know what I mean? Like, when you're suffering from anxiety in front of millions of people watching on television, you don't know what's going to happen. And I was just more scared about that than the enjoyment of going up there and accepting the award. So I was heading down the highway in LA in a limousine that he arranged for me with a rented tuxedo. And at one point, I think that's where I found myself for the first time really praying that he would lose. And I'm sure he wasn't very happy about that if he had heard what I was doing, but I just couldn't stand the thought of going up there. And you know what? Thank God he lost. And but because I had a VIP pass, I was invited to this big gathering in this big hotel, and each ballroom had a different theme to it. And the Count Basie's orchestra was playing in one. It was the disco era, so there was a big disco in another one. And I went inside a room that had a bunch of televisions playing the Grammys, which was very strange, because it was like the people want to see how their artist performed over and over again, because that means to them a lot of money, So, and there was a big spread of food, and I had an experience which completely changed my life. And what happened was, I saw a musician who was like my idol. He was the ultimate jazz musician who had broken into the pop market without any sacrifice to his artistic integrity. and it was like an amazing song that I think he won that year for. And I looked at this guy, and he looked totally depressed to me. And I stopped myself and I said, whoa, I am running way too fast, trying to be something that doesn't necessarily provide me with true happiness. I need to stop and find true happiness, and then let my music express the happiness, not try to find the happiness in the music.
Mm.
And I had this realization, and it was clearly a gift from above. It was not a logical process that I went through making these calculations. It was a very clear, I don't want to say prophetic, but it was an impression that was implanted within me that made me turn around and decide, you know what? I was never a kid. I was never a teenager living the life of a teenager. Now that I'm 18, you know what? I'm going to go to college. And I went to music school in Bloomington, Indiana, where they have a really good composition program there. And everyone there wanted to be like that guy who was depressed. You know, everyone wants to be the greatest jazz musician who's, gets a pop hit, And I felt somewhat lonely there, like out of place there. And meanwhile, my religious identity was quite hypocritical in certain ways. I observed some things, and other ways I didn't. And it was sort of like a selective process that didn't, like, if you believe in this stuff, believe in it. If you don't believe in it, don't believe it. So I figure I had to go somewhere where I could find people who believed in it, and I could either tell them they're wrong and prove to myself that it's wrong and reject it completely and live a happy life with a sense of inner peace that I resolved that issue, or embrace it and learn to live with that as well. And so I went to Israel, where I knew there were many people who are extremely sincere in their commitment to the religion. Then I went to what's called the yeshiva, which is a place of study right in the old city of Jerusalem. So I would wake up in the morning and I would overlook the Western Wall and the Temple Mount where the temple once stood. It was an absolutely awesome experience, being immersed in 3,500 years of history that I was learning about in the books as well. I mean, there I was breathing in this incredible air of sanctity. And over time, it took a while, but I became more and more observant. But what happened was, while I was there was nothing better for my music than being there. There I was, away from the artsy culture. It wasn't about being weird. It wasn't about being different than everybody else. And it was about just being myself and allowing my music to come out from a very sincere place. So the more I got to know who I was, the more my music expressed that. And you could hear an incredible change in the quality of the types of compositions that were coming out. So I had a jazz band. I used to perform every Saturday night there. And then I got all these gigs because there was this young musician on the scene who, at the time, there weren't so many good musicians in Jerusalem. Now there's amazing ones, but back then there wasn't. And I really started to develop myself as a person through the spiritual search that I was on. And developing myself as a person included my artistic expression and even the way I express myself more with other people. I became more outgoing. I let down my guard more. I just was able to breathe and live my life. And that was an incredible transition. But I really believe that was all sparked at that Grammy Award event, because there was something that gave me a realization that I've got to turn around and discover who I am.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, that's an incredible story, man. And you went to Jerusalem. You started studying, and then I guess did that bring on spirituality, or were you getting more into religion?
Well, to me, it's one and the same. when we pray every day, we pray from our soul. From our heart and our soul are expressing a certain love and fear of God. That's a spiritual experience. But it's possible that somebody could actually be somewhat observant of Jewish law, but not allow themselves to experience the spiritual, what we call spiritual aspect of that. I was very drawn towards more the spiritual experience. Naturally, as a musician, that was an obvious path to take. And so there was primarily from what's called the Hasidic movement that there was a lot more direct teachings about spirituality. And that's what got me into the types of writings that I did in my books and my teaching of classes over the years. A lot of it had to do, and still does have to do, with discovering who you are. So it's because that was such a helpful process for me. So what I did is when I became a rabbi and started teaching over to lots of people who had no background at all, somewhat like I did when I came, and thousands of students over the years. And I wasn't into like preaching to them that they should become this or should become that. But what I did was I helped them become themselves by using Judaism as a means, as a source to help them do that. So I looked at the classroom and I'd see all these people there, and I'd say, like, well, like, what's going on in their minds? And so many people are suffering from loneliness, right? Lack of self-esteem, lack of connection to their inner self. So I did searches on online for like the most popular song titles, and loneliness, there were like, it just spit out, hundreds and hundreds of songs, that are all about loneliness. So I started developing classes that were based on the types of things that I felt people were going through at the time while I was talking to them. Relationships, how do I know it's the right one? All these kinds of things that were like real life issues, but more from an emotional standpoint, like what are these people going through now? And after 25 years of teaching those ideas over, I found that there was this one common thread that seemed to connect it all together. And that was that they all really wanted to know who they really were. If I know who I am, then I can make choices based on that person that I've identified. I know if I'm a certain type of personality, then whatever job I take, if it has enough of that personality in it, then I'm going to enjoy doing what I get up to do every day. In terms of like the type of person I want to marry, how do they complement my personality, and what types of personalities go with others and things like that. And the more I learned, I was studying and teaching these ideas, I came up with this theme called Journey to the Real You. And that is the title of the first album I put out when I was in Israel with amazing musicians that I found. One guy who moved to Israel is a guy named Harvey Brooks, who he played for Miles Davis. He played for the Doors. He played for Bob Dylan. And he's an amazing musician living in Jerusalem because his family was there, and it was totally accessible because I had a executive producer who also became religious, who used to be the president of David Geffen Records, a guy named Ronnie Vance. And he put me in touch with all the top musicians in Tel Aviv mainly. And so I put this album together, Journey to the Real You, and on all the songs are really they're all about getting to know yourself and trying to remove the blocks that prevent us from knowing ourselves. And there's the other side of the question of not who are you, but what are you? Like what does it mean that I'm a soul? Am I soul? Does that mean that I'm this spiritual thing? So like, what's this body doing here? And so I started getting into the relationship between the body and the soul. And we learn from Kabbalistic sources that we actually have two souls. We have an animal soul, which is what our drives, our sexual drive, our drives for eating and reproducing and defending ourselves, very much like an animal does. We have that within us. but we also have a divine soul. And the divine soul is a precious soul that was put into us that nobody can touch. I remember there was an example I found in like a psychology article, that the psychologist was in front of a crowd and he said, "Who here wants this $100 bill?" And he held up the bill and everyone put up their hands. "Of course I want the $100 bill." And then he crinkled it up and then he said, "Who now wants it?" And of course everyone wants it. And then he put it on the floor and he stomped on it and made it really dirty. And he said, "Who wants it now?" And everyone wants it. So he says, "Listen, you've just taught a very important lesson." He says, "No matter how much in life you get stomped on and crinkled and, you know, pushed around, you'll always be loved in the eyes of those who love you."
Oh.
So that's a very nice idea, but I don't believe it's true. And the reason for that is because what if somebody doesn't love you? What if somebody's all alone? There's no one to love them. Does that mean they have no right to love themselves? They should love themselves because intrinsically within them is a divine soul that was created in the image of God. That's a beautiful thing that's inside of you, that's inside of me, and that's inside of every human being. There's this divine soul. And if I can get in touch with what that is, then I now have a true basis for self-esteem. My self-esteem is based on knowing for sure that I'm good. Okay, I may get out of touch with that. I may lose sight of that greatness that's within me. But if I dig down deep, I know that I'll find the gold mine there. And what many people do is they try to create a superficial sense of self-esteem, like, I'm going to do it, I'm going to make it, I'm going to, you know, like they pump themselves up as if they're going to be successful. Like I used to do ski racing, and then my coach would say, "You're the best, Green, you're the best." And meanwhile, over there's Brown, and his coach is telling Brown, "You're the best." What? I'm good just because my coach is telling me I'm good? No, we need an absolute objective basis for self-esteem. And therefore I have something to truly love within myself. That's an absolute gift from God. And so, you know, that's something where once you know that's there, then it helps tremendously with just the way you relate to other people, to relate to yourself, marriage, so many things that have to do with just a heightened spiritual awareness. And that became, you know, that's why my second book, Pictures of Your Soul, is to heighten that type of awareness. And then I put out a second album, which is connected to that book, called Empty Spaces. And Empty Spaces is based on a type of meditation. Do you want to hear about the meditation?
Oh, heck yeah.
Okay. So there's a meditation that is based on this idea that it says in the Bible that God breathed life into Adam, into the first person, right?
Right.
So now if you think of breathing, the sound it's like an H, which in Hebrew is a hey. It's the fifth letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And there's this concept that we have 5 levels of the soul. So 5 is the fifth letter of the alphabet, and it makes the sound ha, right? So when God breathed life into us, he breathed like the letter hey into us. The ha sound of that letter hey is breathed into us, and there are 5 levels of the soul because of those 5 levels that he breathed into us. And the lowest level of the soul is connected to the blood. And that's why it says in the Bible, a number of places, that dam hu nefesh, which means the blood is in the nefesh, which is the lowest level of the soul. So now you have this connection between the spiritual and the physical, which is the challenge of life, is trying to elevate ourselves where we're focused more on the spiritual. But our goal is not to deny the physical. We can use the physical for all kinds of amazing things. It's just a matter of not becoming like the animal soul part of us. We're supposed to live like a divine soul that uses the body, much like a candle. The flame uses the wick. You have a physical part and you have the spiritual part, which is the flame. In fact, it says in the writings that the candle of God is the soul of man. So just like the candle is always rising up, but it can't detach from the wick, so too the soul within us is always rising up, but yet it doesn't leave us until it's time for us to pass on to the next world. So there's a meditation that goes through the levels of the soul. And it starts off very much like mindfulness meditation, where you are concentrating on your breathing, right? Which is the most basic thing that's there, and it's happening all the time. And it's idea that we actually are being given breath every moment. It's something we have to appreciate, that we're being blessed with the ability to breathe every moment. And then you go up the body from your toes right up to your head, just becoming aware of all that there is there on the physical level, and the blood is flowing through it all with that lower level of the soul, which is the nephesh. And when you experience that, it blocks out a lot of the distractions in life, a lot of the things that make us make bad decisions, that make us talk with less dignity. A lot of the types of things that we do is because we lose track of that basic idea that we're a soul. But then there's a next level up in the meditation where you actually go into a space of infinity. It's a space I call empty spaces. And that's the title of my second album, is Empty Spaces, because the title song is actually this meditation that takes you from the breathing, the body connection into the connection that is not connected to the body, but is an infinite connection. And when you go into that realm, at the beginning, it seems very scary, because like you're going into this dark place where like you don't know anything there. It's like totally abstract, but it's actually a very loving place, almost like being in the womb. It's like you don't know where you are, but it's made to be the most comfortable place in the world. And so you when you head into that second level in the meditation of empty spaces, then you're really in a very high place. To climb above that, there are people who can do that, but for me, that's the level that I've gotten to. And I do that, and I try to bring that awareness not just into the meditation, but when I get up and walk away, I try to hold that with me. So when I'm having a conversation with somebody, I'm talking to them with a heightened awareness of spirituality. And if you do that, then things like anger and impatience and being rude and things like that, they just dissipate, because you're not looking at yourself as a person who's concerned about those things. You're concerned about living up to what the meditation brought you to. So you're living with that sense of awareness, as opposed to just an exercise in the meditation room. It's something we try to carry with us as well.
I brought up that question earlier, and the reason why is because I most of my life I've spent doing things I shouldn't do, and then I started going to church, and the church that I went to was a Baptist church. I had a falling out with my preacher, and my brother had ended his life. My father had ended his life, and I got mad at God, and I left. But I'd also, after some time, started getting my relationship back with God. I've been to different churches, and it just seems like the people there, they make up their own set of rules, and you either go by these rules or you're gonna be shunned, basically.
Right.
I never could find a church that I was really, really comfortable in. I mean, there was one that we were sort of going on a regular basis, and the only reason why I went is because one of my friends went there. And then I wanted to get my relationship back with God. Thank God that my wife that I have now, she's put me on a spiritual path to God. And I pray. I, I praise his name. I'm thankful for everything that God's done for me, the things that God provides me with. I just have a hard time with going to church. So
Right.
that's why I associate the religion with the people in the church and not so much with my path to God.
Right. That's very understandable. It's even people sometimes they go to synagogue also, and they're not really connecting, but we have to learn how to connect. And I can't speak for you or for the church you go to, but um, prayer is a meditative process as well. And there's a lot that you can study about how to pray. I mean, from Jewish sources that make the whole process of prayer actually a very pleasant one, and one where you feel like you're being yourself and you're pouring out your heart to God in a very real way. And in fact, there's even restrictions where, like, if you say we say a silent prayer 3 times a day, and in the silent prayer, if you don't have the proper intention that you're standing before God, then it's on an ultimate level, it hasn't really worked. So it demands of you to have to have the right intention while doing so. And I study Torah, the Bible, the oral law for about 3 hours a day, and that's another way of wrapping myself around the holiness of the Bible by being immersed in it. So my life really centers around it. It's not something I do like once a week to go. It's every day I go, and 3 times a day, and it's sort of like, I remember when I used to run a web company in Canada, and we'd have a big meeting coming up, but it's time for prayer, and you can't pray after sunset for the afternoon prayer. And so what I had to do is I have to go and I have to pray and recognize that everything that's going to happen in this meeting is up to God. And my consciousness in that prayer is one of just letting go of all the marketing and all the web stuff and all the technical stuff, and just being there alone with God, and then go back into the meeting. And the person who went back into the meeting would be much more calm and have much better sense of judgment, because I was in a much more peaceful place with God and with myself. So it's not a matter, it's a very difficult thing to go like to church once a week and expect to be in good spiritual shape. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
This is something that is a daily process of heightening your awareness, and that could be through meditation. It just could be through sitting and thinking. There's all kinds of ways of doing that don't require you having to go. And I'm not discouraging you from going to church. I'm just saying that the mindfulness and the awareness of the preciousness of your soul is something that takes work. There's idea, and there's a book called Tanya, which is a great Hasidic masterpiece, which it describes that the animal soul and the divine soul are like two like two armies trying to take over the body. And the divine soul wants to capture as much as possible to elevate it, and the animal soul wants to capture it as much as it can to control it.
Right.
But it's an interesting thing that there's a story that that is an analogy that tells us that there's a king who wanted to test his son to see if he was able to control himself and not fall to the desire of a prostitute that the king hired for his son. And the story teaches us that the prostitute herself did not want to win. She was just there to give the prince a chance to be able to overcome his desires and be strong on a spiritual level. So same with the animal soul. God didn't give that to destroy us. The desires that we have to do things that are inappropriate are they're there as a gift in a way. And we just have to, just like, if you're learning karate, you have to learn a lot of moves. If you're learning to fight, you have to learn all these drills of how to connect a punch to a kick to a block.
Right.
How can we understand that so well on a physical level, yet when it comes to our spiritual strength, we don't seem to practice that? So the idea is that we should try to develop for ourselves, like the same kind of model on a spiritual level, to develop that sense of strength and ability to withstand temptation and elevate ourselves and be the heroes within ourselves. But we don't believe that if somebody sins, they go to hell. We believe if someone sins, they made a mistake and they can repent and enjoy the fact that the divine soul was never contaminated, because it never is. That no matter what, you're still a good person inside, and you can't get down on yourself for having made mistakes, because that itself is the evil inclination trying to tell you you're so bad you'll never make it. Right?
Mhm.
That's that's not a healthy attitude towards growing. Regrets can sometimes cause a person to drop to the lowest level, where rather you do something wrong. Okay, fine, I did wrong. I'll ask for forgiveness. I'll try to train myself not to fall to the same thing. I'll avoid putting myself back in the position of what made me fall in the first place. And then I'll move forward in life and enjoy and continue the growing process.
Well, I feel like my journey, or I'm not saying my journey, my relationship with God is not where it's supposed to be, because even though I do pray, and I pray quite often, and I still have a hard time forgiving myself for the things that I've done. And even though I do my best to try to love myself and not put myself down all the time, I feel like most of the time it's for show.
Right.
I want to be a better person. I want to care for myself the way I care for other people, but I have a hard time with it. So
But you have to understand that no two people in the world are the same. That's why in my book the cover has a thumbprint on it. Just as there are no two people who have the same thumbprints, no two people have the same soul, and no two people have the same challenges. You were obviously brought up in a challenging situation. If you lost your brother and your father, there's a lot of challenges there that you could feel a sense of regret, a sense of anger towards God. Those things that were put into your life that are challenging you, and you have to face that as being like an opportunity for growth, not to become a victim of it, but rather than to use that as, look, I'm going to go another little step forward every day. It's a little step. You can't transform yourself and throw yourself into a completely different place, overnight. But our view of spiritual growth is that if today I'm supposed to make a small step, then when I make that small step, I am 100% successful. Right?
right.
That's 100% success. I don't look at my whole life and say, today I have to achieve my life goal. I look at this little step that I have to make is my goal for today. And if I am able to do it, I'm 100% successful. And if I didn't do it, so that I'm not a failure, I just didn't achieve 100% success, means I just got to go on the next day and try to achieve it then. And it may take a few weeks. But when I get to that point, then I create another little step. And eventually it accumulates and you'll find yourself growing. And the growing experience in itself is such an invigorating part of life. to feel yourself moving. So in a way, we like to, we tend to set goals that are too high for ourselves just so that we'll fail. And, it's if I set that goal too high, then I don't have to try anymore because I'm just going to fail no matter what. So why should I even try?
Yeah.
But if you create goals that are attainable, then you're going to feel a sense of growth because you know that little step is something important.
Why do we sabotage ourselves? Why do we even hate ourselves in the first place?
Well, those are the voices of what we call the evil inclination. It's built into us to challenge us, just like the prostitute challenges the prince of the king. The more you learn about those type of voices and what they are trying to do to sabotage your progress, then the more you can actually look out for them and say, hey, you know what? I know you. Get out of here.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna let you do that like you did last time. It's on a simpler level. You can imagine if somebody's on a diet, right? And they have a doctor's appointment and they could walk one way to get to the doctor's appointment, which is a little bit shorter, passes an ice cream store. And there's another way to go. You have to go another extra block, but there's no ice cream store there. So the question is, which way are you going to go? So if you know of your vulnerability to go into the ice cream store on the way there, you have to use the bathroom. So you go in the bathroom in the ice cream store and then you feel bad. Well, I used their bathroom without buying something. The next thing you know, you're eating the ice cream again. On the other hand, if you say to yourself, I know my vulnerability, I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go the longer way because I know my weakness and therefore I'm going to stay away from it. And what happens over time is you become strong enough that even if you pass the ice cream store, you're not going to go in because you're building yourself up by going the other way. There's a concept what's called Nakudas HaBechira. It's the point of your growth. Like everybody's in a different place in the battle. Some people are on the front lines here and some people, their front line is somewhere else. But the idea is to always take that particular point that you're at and move forward with that and build strength to be able to move. And like when I was first becoming religious, there were all kinds of things that, that I had to stop doing, and at first it was very difficult and, I wasn't succeeding at them all, like certain foods that I'm not allowed to have, we don't eat bacon, we don't eat pork, right? So, but, or milk and meat together. So but I love a bacon cheeseburger. I just love the bacon cheeseburger. So what am I going to do? Now I can't have it. So at first it was very difficult, but after a while of not having it, I have no desire at all for a bacon cheeseburger. It's just not part of my life anymore. So similarly, whatever the things are that you would like to be able to grow and move past. So if you set that kind of program for yourself where you practice it enough, you'll see, there'll be new challenges. Like now, my challenge is when I'm praying to have the proper intention. I'd rather that be my challenge than the bacon cheeseburger, right? Because this is a more spiritual challenge, but I try to elevate myself so that my challenges are always becoming higher ones. And therefore, these voices that come into our mind and into our hearts and into our desires that make us do things we don't want to do, that's something that it's very attainable to be able to work on it. Otherwise, God would have made you in an unfair way. It's not, he doesn't want you to fail. He wants you to succeed. He wants you to come close. He loves you. So he wants a loving relationship. He just wants you to work for it a little bit so that you'll build the love through working. That the serving God is the same, is the word avodat Hashem. I mean, avoda also means work. So serving him it's work. It's just like kids and their parents, they have to show the dedication that's going to elevate the relationship by each one contributing something to the other. And that's a growing, loving relationship.
Do you work with people one-on-one outside of the synagogue?
Yeah, I don't even have, I'm not a pulpit rabbi.
Oh, okay.
I've done a lot of teaching for students who are mainly students who are visiting Israel from America and from England, South Africa. And I taught at a girls' school for 5 years. I've taught at various yeshivas, which are like schools of where people come just with very limited background. That's my expertise, is to teach people with limited background. And yeah, I haven't done a lot of it lately because I've been focusing more inwards and on my family and some business projects that I've been involved with, and my music, which is very central to my life as well.
And your book,
Yeah.
is that available like on Amazon?
Well, the best place to get the book is yes, it's on Amazon, but if you go to my website, realuproject.com, there is a link to Amazon, but there's also, what I can do is for your listeners, if you give me a coupon code, I'll give them 30% off, right? So you just tell me what word to put in there, and when they go buy it, they'll get that discount. And on the website, you can also get, you can listen to the music. Also on Spotify and Apple Music and all those places, you can look up David H. Green. I have some, there's one video about Jerusalem on my website that is a beautiful, beautiful video of just me walking through Jerusalem and singing about how much I feel my heart, my soul connected to the stones of Yerushalayim, of Jerusalem. So that's on the website as well. And both books, there's links to be able to get them there. And my goal is, like, this isn't what I do for a living, anymore. It's not like, thank God I'm as an inventor, I have technology that I've sold, and that's how I live. And so my goal is just to try to bring more happiness to people. And I believe that happiness is dependent on a connection with the soul, because the person who's happy is the soul of the person, not the body of the person.
Are you on social media as well?
Yeah, on Facebook, I don't even know what to tell you. They just look up David Green or David H. Green. I have some people who are marketing my book on there, but maybe what I'll do, I'll put a link on my website to it.
What if you could send me those links? I can put them in the description, and
Okay.
that makes it easier for people to click on and go to. And
Right.
you want to pick a word for the discount?
You give me one that you want.
No, we'll put love. How's that?
Love.
Mhm.
Okay, that's the discount. 30% off for love. That's a good deal.
I will put that in the description as well, so people will know. But yeah, go to his website, get the book. I'm very intrigued with everything you've had to say, and I appreciate you coming on here and spending your time. Time is
My pleasure.
precious.
There's just one last point, is that the Jewish religion doesn't try to convert people. We don't try to convince anybody to become Jewish, because if they want to, it's got to be out of sincerity. So they come to us, and we even like push them away a little bit at the beginning to make sure that they want to do it for the right reasons. But there's 7 laws that do apply to the rest of the world, that called the 7 laws of Noah. And if you're interested in learning more, that's something to look up, or you order on Amazon, the 7 laws of B'nai Noah. That may be something you find interesting, because it's not meant for it's not about being Jewish. It's just about certain basic awareness of what a person should have in a connection. And if in a way, it'll create for yourself your own space to be connected to God in a very sincere way.
I think we could probably have about a dozen or more podcasts for the subjects that I'd love to talk about with you. So maybe we can get back together in the future.
For sure. Just you got my email.
Yes, sir.
And it's also my email and phone number are on my website. I have a US number that rings right through to me. I'm available. I'd be happy to continue the conversation online or offline as well.
And again, thanks for the discount. I appreciate that. And
My pleasure. And
for spending your
okay.
time with me.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And I also want to thank all of you out there. If you are new to the channel, thank you for stopping by. I really, really do appreciate it. And I hope you'll come back. Hit that subscribe button for my regulars out there. And y'all know how much I appreciate you. It's because of you I get to do this. So until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network